You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. I'm Kevin, your co-host, the engineer, or the guy who reads instructions, uses the right tools, and most of the time follows those instructions.
And I am Scott. I'm the slapstick parts guy playing old school today with trying to do this live. Yay!
Well, relatively live. In other words, this is a direct to record and release because we're recording this show
Literally live than the day of.
So
Thanks, Paul Jordan, for saying that.
So
Where's my podcast? I'm working on it.
So, and there's reasons for that, and
Yes,
we'll explain
yes.
that shortly.
Absolutely. But while we will share what works for us as well as what didn't, remember, it's always up to you to do what you want to your Jeep. So read the instructions, pay attention to those instructions, and what was am I missing now? There's a key important phrase I'm missing there, Kevin.
How about do what you want to do to your Jeep?
Yes.
And do it safely. Let's just finish with that. It's very untypical, but this is essentially a very almost nearly live podcast.
Exactly, yes.
So anyhow, folks, this one is going to be interesting. And if you saw the title of this podcast, 2 weeks in a TJ, and yes, my wife and I are still recovering.
And they have all the legs.
Actually, though, it wasn't bad. It's going to be an interesting change for you guys. We usually, obviously, go into a deep technical subject somewhere along the line, and we're really not going to do that here, and I mean that honestly, because trip that we just did, my wife and I, unfortunately, Scott had to work.
Yes.
That working for a living has got to really be tough. We got back just a week ago from the Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival in and near Butler, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And so we thought we would share kind of a Jeep and travel log of our experiences and what it was like to go to that event, and did we think it was worth travel, as well as a couple other almost nearly technical reviews of the trip along the way.
So there was good food, adventure, everything. Adventure,
nasty noises under the Jeep.
nasty noises under the Jeep. There was scariness. There was excitement, anticipation, and all other words I'm forgetting.
There was two-handed grips on the panic bars.
Exactly, and spiritual things and like.
Oh God. Okay. So anyway, folks,
Trying to sell the sizzle.
let's get started because this one could maybe kind of run just a skoshie long. I'll try not to do it that long because particularly with my cohort over there adding all kinds of color and snarky comments, which is his want. I wasn't saying that, but suffice to say that my wife Susan, aka often heard to as part of the financial department of this podcast, decided that we should go up and go to the Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival, and officially in Butler, PA, but it was really held a little bit away from that. We'll get into that in a minute. But en route, we decided to test a couple of things that I have seen on the interwebs furiously back and forth. And we're going to start with the test. And the test is, for those of you who have ever heard of it, is Amtrak runs one specific train line called the Auto Train. And it is a single location. It goes from Sanford, Florida, up to Lorton, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. Or if you're inclined in Lorton, you'll say it goes the other way. It goes from Lorton down to Sanford. Pretty much exists, according to the folks I talked to there, primarily due to the snowbirds. And if you don't know that term, I'm surprised, but let's go ahead. And it's people who live up north during the summer and come down and camp or condo here in the Sunshine State during the winter. And what is going around the interwebs is a furious discussion of people running up and down the East Coast is, oh, they won't take modified Jeeps. Oh, they won't take Jeeps. Oh, they don't do this. Oh, you can't use a full width axle. You can't do all of these other can'ts.
I've heard them all.
Okay. And I'm going to give you the straight up because on June 5th, my wife and I packed the TJ. And I do mean packed. I had to clear a little window so that I could see out the rearview mirror.
Right.
And we headed over from where we live in a little area called Lithia. Good luck finding it. I'm sure you can find it with Google, but there's a lot of Lithia. I don't know. But it's about an hour and 45 minutes from Sanford, which was actually really shouting distance from the co-host sitting over here. I could have probably thrown a
I literally pass by the station as I drive to work.
right. So, we got over there. And while I was over there, we registered the Jeep beforehand, obviously. Got a lot of the answers. But while I was there, it was really kind of neat that they were willing to talk to me on a technical basis. So this is the closest we'll get to a tech session.
Yeah.
They take Jeeps, even modified Jeeps. They said the only restrictions that they have, guys and gals, is they have 3 different classifications. You have standard vehicles, extended vehicles, and two-wheeled motorcycles.
Right.
So let's go to standard, because most of our Jeeps will fit in the standard category. And they only have 5 different qualifications. Okay.
Okay.
And one that they told me about that's not written on the sheet, but should be obvious. And we'll get to that in a minute. Maximum length.
Yeah.
192 inches, better known as 16 feet. I don't know about you guys, but my TJ fits that easily. Maximum height, 85 inches. If you can get in a garage door without scraping, you're good here. Okay.
Yeah.
Maximum width, including mirrors. Now, they told me if you can fold the mirrors in easily, they'll take, it's whatever it is, so, and that's 84 inches.
Well, one thing too, most modifications people, they stretch their Jeeps, they don't widen them.
Yeah. Well, except for, people that put tonners on TJs and YJs. But the thing is, even most 1-ton axles would fit. Minimum ground clearance. I don't think this is a problem for any Jeep. It's 4 inches. It's got to be 4 or more. Okay, guys. So lift kits aren't a problem. They were laughing about that when I told them that one. And then this is the one that probably gets most Jeeps, particularly the boys that have gone really big.
Yeah.
Maximum tire width. Each tire cannot be more than 14.5 inches wide. And that's because the cars that the Jeeps and other cars are loaded onto would remind you of the
U-Haul trailers?
U-Haul trailers with the tray type track areas for the wheels to roll in. And they don't want you to be floating up out of those trays with tires.
For obvious reasons.
Yeah. Similarly, the only difference on the extended vehicle is they grant you up to 18 feet long. Everything else is the same. And if you have a motorcycle, they'll even take motorcycle. They have special little motorcycle carts that they load 5 or 6 motorcycles on and then pull it up into the train as well.
Aww.
And we will post on our Facebook page some pictures of this little diatribe I'm going to talk to you about, including pictures of the TJ, which was hilarious. When we dropped it at Sanford, there was a little bit of an argument over the drivers who got to drive it up into the train. And one guy says, I drive a Jeep, I'm taking it. And they all kind of, let Joe do it. So anyway, what's it like to go on the auto train? I've just told you, yes, you can go on the auto train. First thing everybody says, well, what did it cost? Well, it depends on what you're going to do. You can go coach. You can go sleepette. You can go cabin. You can go double cabin. You can... And of course, whatever you do directly affects the cost.
Yeah.
You can probably spend under $500.
It's a la carte.
Or you can spend over, maybe $2,000. It depends on what you're doing. Was it one way or round trip? There's discounts for round trip. It's all on the Amtrak website. You can go in there and look at it all. Just go Amtrak. Remember, that's with a K, Amtrak Auto Train, and you'll find it all out. We went towards the top end. This was a vacation for us as well. So we went ahead and Susan said, I'd like to take a train. We've taken plenty of trains that were seats, just regular coach seats. But she said, I'd like to have my own cabin. Let's just see what it's like. So that was an expense, yes, but that was really a planned expense. Like when you get to the destination and decide you're going to buy that $2,000 lift kit, at the show.
Jeep parts.
Exactly. So, it was very nice. You get your own cabin. It's got a shower, obviously a bathroom, a sink, a low bed, and then a bunk bed, which I will tell you at 65 was not the funnest thing to try and get in and out of. You get your own panoramic window. Yeah. I mean, we're talking 8 feet long of window to watch out for. You had a private area just for those in cabins for our own dining and our own lounge area.
Nice.
Okay, so it was really, really nice. You had a stateroom attendant that, you had a call button for Pete's sakes. I mean, come on. It was pretty high and swanky that way. We also paid for priority. So you pulled up and they looked at my tag and they said, oh, here, you get this sticker, go into the left lane. And somebody comes out and it's like a kind of black tie affair kind of things, which is really hilarious to see. At least it was a little black Jeep,
Yeah.
opposed to a little black dress or a little black suit. Equal opportunity there. And I'll post pictures on the Facebook page this afternoon of the Jeep, both the one of it going up the ramp, and I've got one as we came back home of it sitting in the trailer, and you realize there's a lot of room in that rail trailer. A lot of room for
Nice.
TJ. I could have probably put a couple of foot lockers on the roof and still been...
It's kind of like putting them with a Playmobil car, on a
Yeah.
trailer.
Their care was nice too. They went ahead and they video the outside of every vehicle.
Yeah.
To make sure that you don't get them, but they also have proof if they do damage. So it was great. So for us, some of the positives for taking this and why was it worth it to us? The first day. Now this is day one, June 5th. We rolled out at about 11 a.m., lazy departure with everything packed. Drove less than 2 hours over to Sanford. Stopped, grabbed lunch, filled up the tank so we'd start off clean. And mystically, we went in and got our room, went to bed, or didn't even go to bed. Had a nice dinner, had a very good steak dinner. You could have gotten anything. It was a full
It's a restaurant.
And then the next morning we got awoken with a chime and went and had breakfast and came back. And by 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, we were in Lorton, Virginia.
Right.
And rested, fed, and ready to go. Whereas I guarantee you, if I'd driven up there, I don't think I'd be quite in the same state of mind to roll out. It's very convenient. It's right off of I-95, just below 495, 395, and 95 split. If you know that area, unfortunately, I know it for way too many years.
It's all the fives.
So we did it. Now, there were some negatives. Upper bunk was small and access was tight for an old guy. I'm just going to be honest with you. Some of the track sections, which Amtrak has to roll over a lot of CSX freight tracks. Well, CSX
Is a freight train.
Is a freight train, and freight doesn't really care whether it's a smooth track or not. Going up, we got woke up a couple of times when the things bounced and rattled, and not a horrible thing. I'm going to be honest with you, but that's rail. That's rail travel. The funny thing is going up, we hit those rough spots as we were trying to sleep. Coming back, we hit them before we went to bed, so the sleep was better. And cost. I'm going to put it this way, and I'm not giving numbers deliberately because the costs all change both ways. If you actually compare a coach trip, which is just the seats, and you do get a meal, but it's usually a simpler meal type thing, and you sleep in the chair, you can get the seats in the $90, $100 range, give or take. But the thing is with your vehicle, the vehicle's a couple of $100, $500, $600, depending on the vehicle. Again, you have to look online.
Yeah.
But if you take the same drive and if you get the same condition, i.e., not leaving Lorton until a morning after you've had a good night's sleep and breakfast. Okay. I'm not talking about, I can make it to Lorton in 18 hours or 20 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. But what condition are you in?
Overly caffeinated, heart buzzing, wide-eyed.
But, if you take it the same way, I would tell you that at least one, if not two hotel night stays, plus the fuel, wear and tear on your vehicle, and you're going to go through 5 states. I went through 5 states, had a good meal, a good night's sleep, took a shower, could get up, stretch my legs, go down to the bar cars, do what I wanted. That was worth it to me.
Yeah.
Would it be worth it to each of you? That's only something that you can make. That's why I don't want to get too deep into money. But was it a good trip? It was an awesome trip. To wake up the next morning after a whopping 2.5 hour drive across the state of Florida in Lorton, Virginia, 5 states north of where I started, was pretty cool.
Fed and out of the bed.
And out of the bed. So which led me to go out and hit the Beltway and make my way out of there for the trip on up into Pennsylvania, well rested, well fed, and raring to go.
Yeah.
And so that was great. So that was on the 6th of June. So let's talk about this in a road trip format. All right. We had a run. We were going up, and we were going to make the first jump all the way up into central Pennsylvania. Now, we could have gone up Highway 95, which is what the GPS kept trying to tell us about. And on 95, what you do is you go the Beltway around D.C., one side or the other, east or west, your choice. And then you got to go on up 95 and go around Baltimore and do the whole Baltimore thing. And then you take a jump off heading towards Central PA. I didn't want to do that. I did that for 9 years.
Yeah.
We happen to know a little back way, slower, a little bit longer, but much, much more pleasant. And that was to go out to the west of D.C. and pick up Highway 15 North. Mm-hmm. It's not a super slab. There are pieces of it that are, but most of it, it's a little two-laner. And it winds its way up through the backsides. It's almost on the edge of the Blue Ridge Parkway kind of thing, Leesburg, Virginia, go through Manassas, Bull Runs. You leave Virginia, roll into Maryland at Point of Rocks, Maryland, and Point of Rocks Bridge across the Potomac that is just drop dead gorgeous. If you go that way, have your camera ready. You don't have a lot of time because you pop out of a hill on one side coming down a mountain ridge, and then there's a bridge all of a sudden with the view, and then next thing you know, you cross, and then all of a sudden you're climbing back out again. But it is gorgeous. We actually rolled on up into Thurmont and stopped at a restaurant that we've known from the past called Bollinger's. I should give them a shout out. They are in North Thurmont on the main drag through town. It's a mom and pop and uncle so-and-so's, and they got a brewery out back. And it's kind of that place that you see the motorcycle gangs come up, and they're not really gangs, they're your groups. But you'll also see the farmers, and you'll see just all kinds of people there. Good food. Wonderful people. So we stopped there, had lunch, and then we rolled on up 15. And from Thurmont on up, you're actually crossing through the Catoctin Mountains.
Right.
And if you've never been there, I'm sorry, you missed something in life. They are flat, gorgeous. And the way the highway goes up, it doesn't just go up and down like you're bumping a boat over waves. You kind of side hill the mountains as you run up and then cross over, and then you go down in the valley and go back up. We crossed, into PA, eventually just north of Emmitsburg, Maryland, and then just south of Gettysburg. And we didn't stop because we've been to Gettysburg before. But if you are historical buff in that genre, it puts you right on a stop for all kinds of Civil War kind of stuff.
Yep, been there. I have the address.
Yeah. Well, GPS.
I've been waiting to make that joke for months.
And then we went to a little town called Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. Now, most of you wouldn't have a clue, and I wouldn't blame you. But that's kind of where my wife and I have our first house. We bought the worst house in the best neighborhood, and it ended up being an original railroad house for the westward expansion. Little did we know, and I had to kind of put it all back together again. We wanted to just do a drive-by, and it was really fun to do a drive-by. A, the house is still there. B, all the work that I did as a very young person out back, the carpentry, the deck, the screen doors, the screened-in porch, all of it was still there.
Nice.
And still intact. So that was very heartening to see that. And we rolled on up a little bit through Camp Hill into Enola, Pennsylvania, for those of you that are tracking on Google Maps, because I know some of you will. You told me you would. We have some friends that live in Enola.
Yeah.
They are our Big Chill friends. And they go back with us 40 years. And so we spent the night with them, visited with them. And you go, oh, wow, you went a long ways. Not really. It was only about 3.5 hours drive. Mm-hmm. Which isn't bad.
Especially after a night of rest.
Right, after a night of rest. Now, I won't even call it a negative thing, but the only unexpected experience was it was awful gray.
Yeah.
If you've watched the news.
Back then,
that was the smoke coming from the Canadian wildfires was all the way down into central Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And then rain was completely unexpected, but I found out later that smoke will generate nucleation points to be tech on it and help rain to fall if there's moisture near, and there was. But it was a light rain, and it just kind of rinsed things off, and I could actually see out the windshield.
Yay.
Got up the morning of the 7th and was going on to a next stop. If you haven't figured out yet, I did say this was a road trip, so this is not straight to Butler. Mm-hmm. We went up to our old alma mater. We headed up State Road 22 to Happy Valley, USA, better known as State College, PA. And if you're really not following me, home of Penn State.
Yeah.
Go Nittany. My alma mater, my wife's alma mater, a place we met, where I proposed, where our life together began. Mm-hmm. Okay. I won't bore you with the details. We did find some neat stuff. We found our old dormitories. They're still there. They've been renovated. We found, the Nittany Lion again, had our picture taken there, decided that we couldn't recreate our original one where she was sitting on the lion and I'm behind her. Because she looked at that, she goes, I'm not climbing up on top of that thing at this age. So we just have a nice little picture, and I'll post it for those of you who want the warm and fuzzies.
It's cute.
And then we also had to go find the Penn State Creamery. Now, if you don't know about the Penn State Creamery, it's almost worth a trip to Central PA all by itself. Penn State has its own agricultural, it originally was an agricultural college, and they maintain that to this day. And they raise their own cattle, they milk their own cows, they make their own ice cream and dairy products as part of the agricultural college. And then they run a creamery. And originally it was a small unit just off to the corner of one of the buildings where ice cream that was made that was excess to what the cafeterias could sell was sold to the students. And it kind of got wind that it's really good. And now there's a full-on thing that is got, I don't know how many flavors, and the flavors rotate. And as they do experiments, they bring out other ones. And, it's really cool. It was a lot of fun for us to go back and visit that.
Take that, Briars.
Yep. And it's worth the stop. If you're anywhere in Central PA, they even have parking that you can go into. It was really nice. I mean, can you imagine parking for 2 hours for $1?
Yeah.
Okay.
That ain't down here.
Not down here. So we did crash in State College at a hotel, one of my Bonvoy membership hotels.
Nice.
Very nice. And I will tell you that little drive from Enola to Penn State was, again, under 2 hours. It gave us the Central PA was gorgeous. I mean, and really outstanding once we cleared the smoky areas from the wildfires.
Yeah.
But from that point, we left, and on the 8th, I would say this, Butler at last, but that's kind of eventually. So we left Happy Valley, planning a quick 2.5 to 3 hour drive on to Butler. But along the way, Susan looked over and she saw a sign that said, "Oh, over that way, something you might want to go see." And I'm sad to say that despite living all of her life pretty much until we got married in Pennsylvania, and me probably 5 or 6 years after my dad retired there, we'd never been to the home of Phil. And he's a movie star. You know that, guys. You know who I'm talking about, right?
He's gonna fill
he
you
starred with Bill Murray.
Yep.
Better known as...
He was in the Jeep commercial. Well, not
Yes.
him, but the idea of the movie.
But you get the idea that Puxatawny Phil, better known as the prognosticator for Groundhog Day, is in Puxatawny, and Puxatawny was supposedly only about 35 miles that away. Well, again, we were looking at, 3 hours max drive, and we had all day because the Jeep event didn't start to the next day. So we kind of had one of those, what the heck? We're on vacation. Let's go.
Yeah.
So we cruised on over back roads to Puxatawny, went downtown. Kind of got to tell you, if you get the chance, and if you like old Victorian style architecture, the town is gorgeous. It's well kept. It's friendly. It's not like a lot of the old mill towns. This is the coal region of Pennsylvania for the mining and, some of the steel ores and that stuff that were feeding Pittsburgh. But the town was great. It was a wonderful town. Found out that Puxatawny Phil is married.
Yep.
His wife, Phyllis. We went to the visitor center, and they were friendly there, and they gave us a lot of information on where to stop, and they told us, well, you can go see him. And I'm going, okay, I got to go see him. Okay, where does he live? Not expecting this. Well, he lives in the library, the town library.
Yeah.
Really? The town library. Okay, the town library it is. And sure enough, they've built a burrow for him in the side of the building with a mirror glass outside where you can walk right up to the glass and see Phil and Phyllis living their domestic, life in their burrow.
Just got to know, was he watching the Weather Channel?
No.
Okay.
He was up and moving around. There are other neat things is that, like a lot of different places, we have it here in Lakeland, Florida, where they have fiberglass swans, large scale sculptures, and they send them out to artists to paint them. Disney did this about 10, 15 years ago where they sent the Mickeys out for painting everywhere. Well, they have figurines of Phil. And they sent him out, and he's all over the town. And they give you even a map telling you where to go find him. And I'll post at least the picture of the military Phil. It's kind of interesting. And then there was one other thing I was really told to go visit. And this was fun. And if you're out that way again, Jeep or no Jeep, go up and find Gobbler's Knob. Now, a lot of you are going to go, what?
Yeah. It's a family show. It's an actual place.
It's an actual place. It's where Phil does his prognostication.
Yes.
When you see on February 2nd, and they have the cameras out there and the guys in the black top hats, and it's done at this place called Gobbler's Knob, which is a protrusion of land on top of the Gobbler Mountain, which you got that name from turkeys. So there's nothing. I'm sorry, Scott's over here turning absolutely red with withheld laughter. Go ahead, let it out, Bucko.
No, keep going. Keep going.
Well, I'm going to get on to the names and stuff like that. I had the pleasure to meet Marcy Galando, better known to those who watch The Late Show with Stephen Colbert as the Denim Demon. Stephen found out that all the other guys have fancy names, a roof rattler, lightning bolt, whatever.
Lightning bolt.
Well, I don't know.
He must be the electrician.
But and poor Marcy's the executive director, and Stephen took a little bit of a front that she didn't have a top hat, but the only picture he had was her in her denim jacket. So he named her Denim Demon.
Nice.
She brought the hat out and showed it to us. It was fantastic. She was wonderful to talk with. Thank you, Marcy. She told us all about the whole Punxsutawney Phil, the Punxsutawney Phil fan clubs, the photos with Phil around the world, and then set us up and said, go out and tour the grounds and the shop there, which we did. It was pretty cool. It was worth the detour. And because it was a short enough detour, it actually gave us a chance to get out of the TJ for a few minutes and stretch our legs, because that will be the one thing about trying to do long road trips in TJs. There's just particularly loaded with 2 weeks worth of luggage and stuff, as well as tools and that stuff. So
we kind of had a little tiny bit of experience of that when we went to Tennessee.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. You and I jammed in the Jeep, but that was only for a 4-day trip.
Yeah.
So, and from that point, we pulled on out and rolled on to Butler. It was interesting, though, because, of course, GPS says, oh, well, there's a better way to take you from here. Diddling-ding-ding. Diddling-ding-ding. It took us through places where I was starting to sweat the fuel situation.
Yeah.
I'm going, okay, I need petrol somewhere, that distillate of oil. I need gas. And fortunately, we did run into some small town with a gas pump. And weird thing was, is as soon as we pulled in, an entire fleet of these competitive cyclists showed up.
Oh no!
Wearing mud everywhere, and I'm like, I got to get to the bathroom before them, because there was like 20 of them.
Oh, jeez.
They were very nice people.
Yeah.
But filled up the Jeep, and then we headed on off, and had our one minor panic moment was the one of the little roads coming through the parks, it said, Stone Bridge ahead. Yeah. And I'm going, okay. And then it hit me that the Stone Bridge was on the left, abrupt left, and there was nothing going forward. And I hit the brakes. I was probably only doing 40 miles an hour, but I ended up on wet, smoky leaf litter.
Yeah.
And Susan and I in the TJ made a interesting path almost into the creek itself.
Yeah.
To the point that we're hanging there kind of nose down. Little did I know that is a harbinger of what the event was going to be like. But she had no problem just putting her in reverse, and she clawed her way back up and onto the road. And then I made my hard left turn and went across. I will tell you, when they say a narrow stone bridge, they weren't kidding. I felt like I had to pull the mirrors in, and I didn't quite, but it was less than 8 foot wide with the old dark gray brown concrete sidewalls kind of a thing. So anywho, moving on to Butler. I will say the only disappointment of the trip was, unfortunately, the hotel we were had our reservations in, and they hadn't told us this, was under renovation, no elevator, no ice, until some engineer decided he was ticked off enough and went over and fixed it for him. But I will say the room was fine. The in-room amenities like your linens, and while it wasn't the greatest tub shower, the hot water was there. It ran well. It never went off, and that's why they were renovating, I guess, the hotel. And yes, it's a name brand. No, I'm not going to pick on them. I did send them a note about it, and they apologized. But anyway, other good thing is the lady that took care of the breakfast area, the eatery, did a great job. So that was nice. You just had to listen to tick, 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 brrr, bang, 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 bang if you were in the room during the day.
Hark, is that a 4.0 starting?
Sorry. No, not quite. On the plus side, we were right next and shared a parking lot with a restaurant called Rachel's Roadhouse Restaurant at the end of Butler, PA. Awesome restaurant. Another one worth the stop if you're up in that area. If you go to this event, go to there. And if you can, go the day before it gets packed full of other Jeepers that go there.
Yeah.
It's kind of a barbecue, sit-down restaurant place. But the food was great and the staff was awesome. So I definitely say that. And we still even had time, because we planned loose time, that we decided to go on a little bit of a scavenger hunt. Not one official, one unofficial.
Yeah.
Okay. This is where the Jeep starts, folks, is the Bantam. Let's go find where the factory was. And it took us probably an hour of doing a little research, driving around. I first found Bantam Street or Bantam Road, but unfortunately most of that was gated, and you could see, that some demolition had gone on in that way. But I was, okay, so where's the marker? And eventually was able to get around and did more than a few switchbacks, but we found the historical marker, those lovely big blue signs with yellow letters that tell you that on this spot in.
Right.
And then was able to find a parking lot that was empty, where I was able to tootle Jeep up and park slightly altered just in front of what remains of the Bantam factory. Mm-hmm. So slightly altered, got to see great Grandpappy Jeep's birthplace.
Yeah.
Turns out that the facility, I found out later, is pretty much just the upper floors were admin and the bottom was the factory's cafeteria. And then the chimney was for the boiler complex. And that's all that's really left. And I don't know if next year it'll be there, because they don't seem to hang on to the buildings up there like that. One of those things. Hey, Chrysler, if you're listening, you ought to go buy that and stock it with a museum, and you get a pilgrimage there all the time.
Yeah.
Because believe me, as soon as I told people at the event the next day that I'd been there, where is it? Can we go there? Yes and no. So anyway, let's get on to the show. That's the critical part. So on the 9th, the show begins. Mm-hmm. And we headed straight over to the event center. So this is the whole thing Jeepers probably should be paying attention to. The whole shindig is actually hosted at the Cooper Lake Event Venue and Campground. That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
But it's about 10 miles to the west of Butler, and really more in Slippery Rock than Butler. And yes, those are really town names. But that's where there's room for this event, for all the Jeeps and all the trails and these kinds of things. So let's get you some of the basics on the festival. They're reporting 2,530 registered Jeeps. Now that's registered. Right. That doesn't count all as it came in afterwards. And boy, was there a steady stream of Jeeps coming in afterwards. They listed 120 sponsors and vendors, which is a little less than some of the events and a little more than some of them we've been around to. So I'd put it right there as a good, healthy event. A lot of the big names, there were some there, okay, but there weren't as many as there are in some of the bigger events in Georgia or down at Daytona, and those kinds of things, or the Tennessee one where you almost couldn't walk because of the semis lined up. That's probably the Great Smoky Mountain Jeep Innovation so far is probably the biggest event with vendors as far as numbers of vendors short of SEMA.
Right.
And the interesting thing was they had obstacle courses and both on-site and off-site trails. Not obstacle courses, honest to God, trails. Yeah. So that was kind of neat. Like many of them, the off-site trails were actually regular trails that you don't have to have the event to be on those trails. You just need somebody that knows how to get there. The on-sites, on the other hand, are specific to the venue center, and you wouldn't be able to get to them. It's kind of like Pickens County Sheriff's Jeep Fest in Georgia. The trails aren't open. There are locals that have access, but in general, they're not publicly accessible when the event's not there. So I wanted to check those trails out, and we'll get to that in a minute. The vendor area was nicely laid out, easy access from parking. One of the better parking lots. Their signage could have been a little bit better. It's a little confusing how to get out of the facility. It's almost like, the Disney that doesn't tell you where the exit is, so they want you to spend more money.
Oh, yeah.
But just joking, folks. But they did include, what was neat was a couple of things that I haven't seen in any other event. One is a mock military encampment with people in uniforms, Army tents up, and it has all kinds of MBs, GPWs, BSC-40s. Raise your hand if you know what a BSC-40 means.
I do now.
You do now, which is the Bantam Scout Car Model 40. That's the actual predecessor to the Jeep.
Yeah.
And a history building, a big steel building that's inside that has more early Jeep variants, military, agricultural, industrial, one frame. I met the owner of the guy who has a running frame that, you can see what the underside of these things is like. And it's fantastic because he has the PTO drive and options on it. They also have a history wall. And that history wall has a grill all the way from the prototype Bantam Scout Car with the round nose, the BSC-40, which is the Bantam produced Scout Car. They made 2,700 or so of those. And then picking up with the Willys and Fords and the variants on through the years. And it's a really impressive display. There's also all of the old smart guys, and I hate to pick on them because I'm one of the old guys at least, but history and knowledge in that place was incredible, and the people were willing to share and talk about it. And so if you have an old Jeep and you're looking for this or you're looking for that, or what's the right fuel pump, Scott, they would have those answers. Those guys were incredible, and we'll get a little more on that a little bit. It really is a must-do for any Jeep aficionado who really wants to get into the Jeep. The basic things like the registration booth, the souvenir booth, well-staffed, well thought out, never had a really long line. Like any event, I can't fault them for this, but the T-shirts I wanted, and I was there in the morning, the very first morning. I'm sorry, sir, your size is sold out. Of course it is.
Of course.
Of course it is. I can't help it that I'm a large extra portly.
And I'm a supersized portly.
So once we got through the initials, we were looking and Sue's going, nudge, nudge, nudge. You have a scheduled event. Oh, so I do. We decided to start off with something called the Scenic Park Tour. This facility at the Cooper Lake is surrounded by Moraine State Park and McConnell's Mill. Sorry, I almost forgot the name, which is a original grist mill from way back on the river. Yeah. You think of a corn or flour mill, grist is just
I didn't know what that was.
Yeah. And we were led as a group, and it was actually a very large group of Jeeps that wanted to go on this event of all types, and it almost counted as a mile trail itself because it is gravel roads, park roads. Some of them are back park roads. Some of them were on the edges of the mountainside, kind of no guardrails and overhanging rocks on the uphill side that you drove under that made you, okay, do I crowd the rock and lose a mirror, or do I crowd the edge and lose the whole Jeep?
If you're not paying attention, this will hurt you.
Exactly. But technically it was open to all traffic. So, it was really cool. They also took the time to set up experts. We had geologists, we had park people at various locations that we could stop and they'd explain what were going on. And then there was a short hike down to some of the most gorgeous waterfalls in the area that you couldn't drive up to, but they let us just crowd a parking lot and double park and triple park and, pile up on the rocks and then hike down to the waterfalls. And even part of the waterfalls was an old, what do you want to call the thing? An old kiln assembly that was cut in the mountain because the mountain gave it the shape it needed. So they just drilled a hole through it where they used to smelt metal. So it was really cool. And I would tell you that, again, not technically wheeling, but damn close. And it was a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, though, there was the big event in Butler. So everybody knocked off promptly at 5. And probably should have knocked off at 4 as we took me an hour to get the entire half a mile from my hotel down the hill to the end of Butler.
It's almost like Jeep Beach on A1A.
Exactly was like Jeep Beach. Made me remember that. Folks, there were 17 or 18 blocks of downtown Butler that were piled high. The police cleared all the cars. The Jeeps were parked at about a 30 to 45 degree angle, door to door to door to door on both sides of the street. So you could walk down the middle, but they packed in Jeeps. And oh, by the way, that didn't work. So they went down the side streets one block, and it was only supposed to be two side streets, Jefferson and Cunningham, which are the main cross streets. And no, all the way from the end of town, the south end to the north end, Howard Street to Wayne Street, we had a block each side of the main street also packed full of Jeeps. And really, you had a placard you put on your Jeep, and people would, you'd get ducks. There was a ballot system that people could vote for. I never heard the results of that because I'm really not in that realm, but that's fine. But it was not a show and shine. This was a meet and greet. This was the largest, I don't know what you'd call it, street party.
Well, a street and greet, we talked about it.
A street and greet. And there were no vendors in there per se. There were vendors set back but not Jeep vendors, food, music,
It was a Jeep block party.
That's a great way. It was a 20 block long block party.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, there was one guy doing that too. So that was actually fun. And Sue didn't feel good, so she said, "Oh, you just go ahead yourself." Now she's sorry she didn't go. Well, I'll tell you what, though. It was enormous. To give you an idea, the Philadelphia Inquirer newspaper had people out there. I saw them there, but we saw reports both on TV and in the paper the next day. Yep. That they estimated in excess of 15,000 attendees to the block party.
Yeah.
It was packed.
Yeah.
And unlike many of them where boomboxes drowned out and people are obnoxious, these people were wonderful. Mm-hmm. They were true Jeepers. They were polite. They were having fun. It was a great day.
Yeah.
I mean, you feel fine. There were tons of people with their kids and wagons, and the people of the town were out mingling too. Mm-hmm. So that says a lot too. So let's move on to June 10th, day 2 of the event. Woke up that morning going, okay, now we got to go on and now do something. Well, I knew it was Saturday. So any of you who go to events, you know that Saturdays are the day, because everybody who couldn't come early and go Friday is rolling in first thing Saturday morning, and they're all going to crowd around this and crowd there, and they're going to go here first, and they're going to go do it. Well, I had a good chance to map it out. And I said, look, Sue and I are like, yeah, we need trail time. So first thing we did is we ran back up to the trailhead area for the on-site trails. Again, I want something to see what the event puts together, for itself. And I looked over at the Mild, and I saw a line of Mild, and I saw Jeeps already coming back from the Mild. And I'm like, there's a whole lot of street Jeeps there. Yeah. And I'm not being mean. I'm just saying a whole lot of street Jeeps. I don't need that as a warm-up, but I do need to warm up. I want to stretch out. The Jeep's been on the miles on the highway. I want to go lock in hubs and clean
dip my tire in some dirt.
Right. So we went ahead on the intermediate. Mm-hmm. And intermediate was fine. It was actually kind of fun, but it really was an intermediate to mild, I'd even say. Yeah. There were some verticals, but they were no off cambers. There was no big rocks to do anything with. It was just most of it was maneuvering through trees. It was dodge here, dodge there. I see more mirror scrapes, and somebody's bumper must have been. Oh yeah, because that's part of it over here. So I would say it was an intermediate, but primarily on maneuvering. Okay, not on traction, not on power. And the fun thing was, skinny little TJ on 33 slipped through like, no problem. Although I'll admit that some of the trees were so tight that even in TJ, I'm doing Scott's 18-point turns. There was a lot of backing up and turning. As we got back, I'm looking at the trailhead area, the queue up area, and I'm like, but I figured, now this was my assumption, which wasn't a good assumption, I found out later, was the extreme section just had one Jeep in it. the others were lined up pretty heavily. I'm like, oh, they must have just left. Let's go get in line before, it gets piled up. And so we buzzed on over there, and somebody trotted over. At each line, they have somebody that looks at your Jeep, asks you a few questions, and they put a sticker on your registration on your windshield. And if you get a black sticker, you're cleared for everything.
Yeah, Black Diamond.
Black Diamond, Black Extreme. And so they were like, well, and then they started looking, and they said, oh, never mind. Yeah, you're good. You're good. And so they stickered us black, and we waited. And I'm going, wait a minute, I'm seeing the other lines going zip, 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 zip. And I'm not seeing a lot of people. One more Jeep showed up behind me.
Yeah.
And finally the let's call it the
trailhead.
The manager, the trail manager walked over to the trail lead and said, yeah, go ahead and roll.
Nice.
So here we are, lead and 2 Jeeps. Okay. I get a private tour. Works for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to stick a video up, folks, on the Facebook page you'll get a giggle out of. And pardon, I mean, the voiceovers, you'll hear some chit-chat between my wife and I. But I will tell you something. They did not short you on Extreme. It was a short trail.
Yeah.
There's just physically not that much space in the compound area to put a trail together. We were behind the lead, who was kind of a pretty well prepped up JKU. And let's just say the trail started off with off-camber mud, side hilling, a rock climb, enough to cause me to break traction, which in a fully locked 4-wheel is unusual.
Yeah.
Not once, but twice required me to do an R&R, which Scott said, what's that? I said, a roll back and reposition while fully locked and in low range. I had to do that twice to get through this obstacle. Primarily, and I'm not blaming anybody, but I guess the provided spotter wanted you to have the thrill of putting a wheel up on this tomahawk rock. And to me, a tomahawk rock, folks, is anything that's a narrow rock that's standing blade up. And the problem with a tomahawk rock is that if you're not good at it, you high center on it.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's what he kept driving me towards, but it was also on a hill. That was a fairly steep hill, and so I kept breaking traction rather than getting hung up. So I just kind of ignored him and said, look, I'm going my own path. And I did. And when Scott heard the video, you could have seen his face.
Man, my speed bag took damage on watching that.
And I already took him out and let him roll under, slightly altered. Slightly altered, took absolutely no damage. It was just cleaned off some mud. But it was a lot of fun, and we did a little bang, bang, boom, boom, and rolled right over everything. As I say, no damage, just a little extra character under the belly. There's a lot of tight turns and dodging trees. One thing I will say about Pennsylvania, they got lots of trees, lots of them.
Oh, yeah.
And then some of the wilder parts was there were 3 or 4 really steep descents, and not just steep like you see in Utah, but these were steep with rock ledge breakovers. Ones that as you approach the event, the downhill, you lose sight of your lead Jeep.
Yeah.
Or even if you stay back enough where you can see your lead Jeep, which I tried both, he disappears down the ledge and then you still can't see. So you have to ease up very carefully, and you'll hear me if you listen to the video asking, can you see him? Can you see him? I can't see him, because you don't want to start down a very steep descent when there's a known obstacle like your lead vehicle in front of you. You want to wait till they turn and clear in case you lose it.
Yeah.
It's bad enough damaging your own, but you really don't want to hurt others. So we did have a lot of fun with that. No, we didn't have any damage on that. If you listen carefully, on a couple of those downhills, you will hear a bump as I go over that, and that is the sound of the OME shocks hitting their down travel limiters.
Yeah.
And if you hit the brakes too firmly, which I did once, I don't know what it did on Susan's side, but I looked back and saw my rear wheel come off the ground.
Yeah.
That's how nose down we were. I will sidebar and tell you that as Scott was commenting, it's amazing. I did not expect, and nor did I plan to take GoPro cameras. Okay. So I had a dash mount suction cup system on the windshield inside what I had my phone in, primarily as a GPS.
Yeah.
And I had that inspiration on this trail. I said, let me just hit the play button or record button on the camera.
Right.
And do a video. And I was really impressed with my iPhone 12. The stability was fantastic. It actually makes a very readable, watchable kind of a video.
It does a really good job. Like the GoPro image stabilization it has,
Yeah.
is really good. But I was thoroughly impressed with this video.
So what was my thoughts on their on-site trails? They were abso-freaking-lawfully awesome.
Yeah.
They're well done. My compliments to the guys that put that together in such a tight spot. Would I do it again? You betcha.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happened after that? Well, I wanted to do other rides, but we had to get back to the main trail site because we had some folks to meet up with, and we did. So the first guy I had to go meet up with, and I actually met him a couple of times and had some very, very good discussions with, and that would be Paul Bruno. And he is the author of multiple books on both the birth of the Jeep and most of its history. And I'm not going to go too deep into what we talked with because here's a hint, folks. This isn't the last time you're going to hear his name. You just might hear his voice.
Yeah.
We also met with Alison Parliament of Ontario, Canada. And some of you might know who that is. And if you don't, you should. She's the originator of Duck Duck Jeep. And she's one of the folks who started this whole ducking craze.
Mm-hmm.
And she was there. And I had met her at one other event. And it was interesting to see her again. And she handed the fun thing was she handed me a Jeep. I mean, a Jeep. I wish she handed me a Jeep. She handed me a duck, a little yellow duck, which you'll go, oh, that's cute. And I'll look at it. And it says Thunder Jeep. Folks, Thunder Jeep is in Bartow, Florida, all of about 6 miles away from my house.
Yeah.
I went all the way up to central Pennsylvania to get handed a
duck from 6 miles from your house.
So just this past weekend, Thunder Jeep was hosting a Jam the Jeeps event in their parking lot. Mm-hmm. I had to go over there, even though it got partially rained out, and go visit with them and say, hey, this little fellow wanted to come home for a visit. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, well, we handed a bunch of, I said, no, this one's from central Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And they were like, what? I said, Allison gave it to me.
Oh,
we
man.
had a great chat with them as well.
I bet you that quacked that guy up.
Oh, I'm sure it did. Of course, it was really a pleasant surprise to run into our own Stacy and Gabe Yoder, owners of Jester Graphics and the Seven Slot Sisterhood. They were there, and they went on up to other events for vacation after that while we were headed home. And unfortunately, I found out Gabe rolled his Jeep in that event, so I hope all's well with Gabe and Stacy.
Yeah, just some character.
Added some character. Another thing that I did get talked to, there it is. I met the guys. I think he's the owner. I'm sorry I didn't get a name here, and your card doesn't have it. But Skid Row Off-Road is a fab shop in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Yes, the same Carlisle when you talk about the Carlisle automotive shows. And he just asked me if I would let you know that if you're in the central PA near Harrisburg and want to make a run out there on July 21st from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., they are holding an open house party as part of the official kickoff for the Pennsylvania Jeep's 27th annual All Breeds Jeep Show. It's a 50-50 benefit to the Pennsylvania Breast Cancer Coalition. I would love to go there, but of course, that's a little far for me to go in 3 more weeks. But if you're up there and you're listening to this show,
check them out.
Go check them out and tell them that you heard about it on the show.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a lot to cover.
Trying to get it. So now, again, there were a lot more folks than these guys there. A lot of them, Rockslide Engineering was there. I got to talk to them again. Just all of the different vendors that were there. Thank you so much. Some of them are becoming friends of the show. We've met them at so many. I couldn't cover them all here. This would be a 3-part show. So big thanks to everybody, who set up the show. It's very impressive, and if you get the chance to go up to the Heritage, that'd be good.
Well, one of the things I wanted to cover real quickly, we talked, you have the video on our Facebook page, but I never saw the 8-wheel Jeeps.
Yeah. If you get into the history building and those areas, you will see all of the options. So you see ag Jeeps, you see fire Jeeps, you see the ones that were used by mining companies to explore, and your tow truck Jeep. You think about that. A Willys-based tow truck.
Yeah.
I think if you picked up anything heavier than a barbecue grill, it'd lift the front wheels off the front. But, and some of them had double wheels on the rear, which is fine. But to see double wheels on the front, so you had 8 wheels.
That's a quaduli.
Whatever. And it's not that there were 4 axles. There were 8 wheels on 2 axles. And it was to give them a high flotation, high ground traction. And the people were explaining it to me, and I was just looking at it going, yep. They said, you got to understand that in the late 40s, early 50s, Willys Overland, they were trying to figure out how to market this beast to the rest of the world.
Right.
Okay. And the first thought was all these soldiers were going to go back and go home to the farms.
Yes.
Or be hunters. And so the agricultural focus and then a little bit of the off-road focus, and so they go on about that. And again, we'll talk about that, further. But
you can always tell those guys are driving those Jeeps. They're the one that had the arms that are 17 inches in diameter trying to turn that thing. Because
you
just
can
turning the
imagine.
GPW with the 2 little skinny pizza cutters. 8 of those things? Nope.
Yep. So anyway, we basically, with everything, I got to get to the last day. That's right. I forgot about that. June 11th. Now, we technically went wheeling. I'm not going to kid you. We did go wheeling, but it was a little light on trail skill, but full of avoiding moving obstacle thrills.
Fraught with danger, adventure.
Yeah, potential body damage.
Yes.
The trail ride, they set up something a little different, which was a special drive-through safari at the Keystone Safari located in Grove City, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And there you pulled in, and they handed you 2 buckets full of this giant kibble, looks like dog or cat kibble, except it's enormous, and it's a general bulking food that herbivores and ducks and geese and savanna animals love, and they put you through a gate, and next thing you know, there's wildebeest, and oh, by the way, don't feed these because they bite, and okay. And at first you think, nobody wants to come over, and when a zebra comes, they say, don't feed the zebras, you will lose a finger.
Yeah, I was going to say, it digits the zebra.
But you dodging zebras, you getting wildebeest, long-haired Scottish cattle. I can't even think of the names of all the different
When
critters.
you said Scottish cattle, I thought
it's a Sioux. Her decoration thing is long-haired, furry things.
Check out the cow with the kilt.
The cow with the kilt and the long horns. And I tell you, one of them came up and was really happy to take anything I give him, to the point that next thing I knew, my mirror was in danger of taking flight. He had his horns hooked into the mirror on the driver's side of the TJ.
And the Kevin drives away. Where's my watch?
Yeah.
Crunch, crunch, crunch.
And they even had an area. Now, most of this is open to the public.
Yeah.
But they had a section of the trail around the water pond that they had actually brought in rock and gravel and built us a little trail. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that a lot of the okapi and African animals congregated there. In fact, you got stuck for 20 minutes waiting for something to move out of the way.
There's a mountain goat going, amateur.
Yeah. Well, no, it wasn't a mountain goat, but yeah, it was a general idea. But, it's just one of those things that, was it high on skill? Nope. Was it a heck of a lot of fun? Oh,
yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, I'm still finding kibble in the floorboards of the Jeep.
I can bring Gunner over. He'll help.
Yeah, thanks. In fact, we enjoyed it so much that we found out the ticket covered a walk-in visit, and we left and pulled around into the formal parking lot and went back in and spent another couple hours running around the zoo.
Yeah.
So it's a great little zoo. It's people-friendly. It's kid-friendly.
And Jeep friendly.
And so after that, we wandered on back to the hotel. The event had pretty well wrapped up and closed for this season. Now, that was an awesome event. I will tell you again, if you can get there, it'd be a blast. Mm-hmm. I had nothing but good reports from all of the other people that went out on the off-site trails. Again, I tried to stick to the on-site to see what was going to be specific, but there are plenty of off-site trails. I had offers, but unfortunately at this point, Sue and I had a pretty tight schedule to get through.
Yeah.
Now, the next step, let's move on to the last, and we'll get over this thing before everybody goes to sleep. We packed up June 12th. Okay. Which I will tell you was also kind of interesting because that's our anniversary. So
I would have got you something. I didn't know. Or did I? I think I said happy anniversary.
Yeah, you did.
I did. Okay, moving on.
Anyhow,
It's been a long week, guys.
so this is a little more of the travel log section back. We headed south, but this time we headed south towards Pittsburgh, not towards Washington, D.C. I had a little trip I wanted to do. Little history of Kevin here, just for your information, is that when my dad retired from the Air Force and I was 10 years old, we moved up to the Pittsburgh region. And then as he got out of his post-military job, he bought a farm out in western Pennsylvania where I grew up from 10 to going to college. And I started, and that's really where I got started. I had a barn, and I was allowed to do what I wanted to do in terms of old cars, old trucks, tractors, even that funny little thing we now know as a Jeep. Mm-hmm. And I would build and fix and modify and weld and honed a lot of my talents and enjoyment for that lifestyle at this farm. And I wanted to see if it still existed. And because we bought it in near derelict condition and restored it. That doesn't mean it can't go back to being derelict. And my parents hadn't been there in 20 years, and I hadn't been there in 40 years.
Yeah.
So we went hunting for the farm.
Mm-hmm.
It's in that part of Pennsylvania, though, that if you Google it, you're going to see just no stripes of roads, no lines of railroad tracks. All you see are those two little pencil lines that denote dirt roads and gravel roads. And let's put it this way. When people say, where do you live? RD1 box, whatever,
Yeah.
So rural delivery route 1.
The Google car didn't go down there to take pictures.
No, not really. And I'll be honest, it was one of those that I had some concerns and trepidations. Would the house and farm still be there? Or would it be a rundown wreck? Or would it be burned to the foundation? I'll be honest with you folks, there's dangers in messing with 40-year-old plus memories. They're kind of near and dear, and you hate to see them kind of broken.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I was a little nervous, but as we got off of the highway that comes into that area, Highway 2230 between Pittsburgh and Weirton, West Virginia, I basically turned off the GPS and said, you know what? If I can't find it, I don't deserve to go back.
Yep.
And I'm glad. It looked different. A lot. 40 years changes the forest growth on the roads and the countryside quite a bit, but I still found all my landmarks and got home. Did not stop because, yes, the house was still there. It was painted white instead of the red that my dad had. Mm-hmm. And it was in good shape. And I was actually very pleased and think my dad would be proud that it's now owned by someone who proudly flew a U.S. Air Force flag.
Yes.
My dad was a 26-year Air Force veteran, so that meant a lot. That would mean a lot to him. I really thought about stopping, folks, but just seeing the farm there and in good shape was kind of enough. And let's not tempt fate. It was my first thought. And just plus, why is there a black Jeep in the driveway?
Yeah.
Martha, hand me the gun.
You're in that part of town.
We're in that kind of town, but it was fantastic. So after seeing it and breathing kind of an honest sigh of relief, put the Jeep back in gear and crunched on down the gravel roads, back out, and turned south towards Washington, Pennsylvania. And I have to say, I wasn't going to talk about this, but it is kind of a tongue-in-cheek. Got Scott absolutely rolling. Washington, PA is a pretty fur drive from where I went to high school up in a little town called Burgettstown, mm-hmm. which is still a little ways away from where the farm was. But I was introduced to pizza in Washington, PA. I had never had it before, and I know that sounds unbelievable at this point.
Because you live on it.
Because,
well, it's your favorite.
It's one of my more favored foods, yes.
Yeah.
But I was introduced to it because we used to, when we were in high school, we would go down to Washington, PA. It was the big town. Mm-hmm. And I was one of the few guys who actually had a four-door car. And it was a four-door done my way. Yeah. But basically, it had a Mustang high output engine, transmission, manuals for this four-door Ford Falcon. So that meant I could carry passengers. And that usually meant most of the girls that wanted to ride down for a basketball game, who we played constantly in Washington, occasionally football. And they'd always go, let's go to Osso's for pizza. OSSO''S. Mm-hmm. And I was laughing with my wife about, how much things had changed, and that's to be expected. And then I'm coming around, and you rise up over a little hill and come around a corner, and I looked, and I couldn't stop because it was there. I just looked and went, explicative, because Osso's was still there, the same parking lot, the same sign, and still in business. I was like, you're kidding me. 40 years ago. And Sue's like, do you want to stop? I said, no, it wasn't that great pizza. It was just the first thing I ever had.
Meanwhile, what he didn't realize, folks, is that now they've changed their recipes and since known one of the top American pizza chains in that area of the Northeast. I don't know.
That's fine.
I was trying to use words, guys.
But so we rolled on out of there is what I'm going to say. And we started heading south, and now we're heading for a little town in Virginia, which we'll get to in a minute. And, but not stopping for pizza was probably one of those things where like, you're listening, both our stomachs go. I said, can we Google something to eat? And she's going, yeah, I'm trying. And there's not much here.
Yeah.
Long story short, we finally found something, but we had to get off our beaten path and get on to Route 40, actually not Highway 40, Route 40, which is better known as the National Pike, one of the first turnpikes back when that was pretty much a stagecoach or horse trail, outside of Grindstone, PA, which I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe it was named because of the stone there in the mountain that was next to the town. It's one of those towns that kind of hangs on the cliff over the river. Was the type of granite that was used to make millstones or grindstones.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's Route 40 Classic Diner. She says, we got to try it. She and I both kind of like the old diners. And lo and behold, on the top of a roll in the ridge line is a true polished stainless steel and neon lit diner called the Route 40 Classic Diner. And so far, almost every one of those I've been to, I've never had a bad meal. Yes, there was 50s music playing on the system, and all the obligatory records were stuck on the walls. And this one was not done with young girls running around in roller skates, kind of a diner, but
right.
The staff was very, very, very pleasant. And you looked through the other clientele, and they were similar age groups, but it was just a fantastic little nostalgic trip.
I picture a waitress named Flo with a bouffant hair.
You were close.
Okay.
You were close, but Flo had longer black hair and tattoos top to bottom.
Okay, like a Betty Page kind of thing.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And then the other lady was a white-haired, kind of thing. But it still was a very pleasant and a really nice offbeat place to stop. And again, I'd recommend that, but I don't know how to tell you how to find it.
Google it.
Yeah. So, but later on that afternoon, we rolled into our last overnight hotel stop in Middletown, Virginia. And in Middletown, Virginia is a place called the Wayside Inn and Larrick's Tavern. And I'd asked Scott if he knows what a wayside is, but since I've already told him and talking about it, I won't spoil it that way, folks. For those that don't know, a wayside was the term for the little shacks that had a series of corrals around them that people on stagecoaches or riding could exchange their horses and grab a bite to eat and then keep moving on a trip. And they'd exchange, one horse for another.
Like a Pony Express.
Like a Pony Express. In fact, those were waysides as well, but they were government postal waysides. And so the thing is this is now a hotel, and it's in the historic part of Shenandoah Valley, Virginia, where a lot of the battles and stuff went on. The center down in the bottom of this hotel is the old kitchen, they call it. And it's actually the original part of the wayside with the hearth, cooking hearth, doors and bricks that originally were sloped to drain the rainwater off of travelers' boots when they came in. It was really not a bed. It was a place to just come in, grab a bite, a drink, and a horse and keep moving. And it dates back to 1742. And it's purported to have been visited by the likes of General Washington and folks in that ilk. And then somewhere around 1797, the hotel took over or built up around it, and it's been growing ever since. It's one of those classic add-ons here, add-on there, add-on, add-ons.
Like a house I know.
Yeah, like a house you know. And, of course, with something of that age, it's got to come with that ever-loving decoration, some kind of ghost. Ooh, yep. And we were given the whole story from ghost maidens that want you to leave, scratching get out, which I did find a piece of furniture drawer that had get out faintly scratched on it.
Yeah.
To even friendly ghosts, like supposedly there's a resident ghost cat that if you're down in the wayside area or the old kitchen, you may feel like a cat rubbing along your legs.
Casper the Friendly Calico.
Yeah. So we were both kind of disappointed, but also a little thankful that none showed up during our stay. Disappointed in that, ghost or not, a cat visit would have been fun.
That would have been perfect.
Thankful as we got a good night's rest without being disturbed. So a big shout out and many thanks to Piers and Michael and the rest of the staff there for an absolutely great stay. It's a little bit out of the way. It's about an hour outside of D.C. To the west, but it's definitely worth the trip if you're into all of the battlefield stuff, the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, and or into ghost hunting.
It's full circle.
Yes, it is.
Because you went to the Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival and the birthplace of America. How much America? You went America to America, buddy.
Yeah. My wife's really good at scheduling travel.
Yeah, actually, she really is.
So, we both loved the Wayside Inn and Larrick's Tavern. It was a lot of fun, but I will admit I was slightly disappointed because I wanted at least to see paw prints on the Jeep hood when we left.
Give me a minute. Be right back.
Yeah.
Zaya.
So down to our last 2 days together, the 13th and 14th on this trip. Pretty straightforward. We left Middleton, Virginia, and followed the digital breadcrumbs off the iPhone GPS back to Lorton because I didn't want to think, and the auto train station, just as 9 days before. We handed the keys to the loading driver, grabbed our overnight bag, and checked in and watched the Jeep. And also put a picture of that. I got a good shot of the Jeep all the way down the train. So you look down this upper dark tunnel and you just see the spare tire of a Jeep and my little flag. And after boarding and having a really nice rest, we got up and went to dinner and then went to sleep. A little butt sore from a weekend at TJ.
Yeah.
And woke up Wednesday the 14th, and we were back home here on the other side of Florida in Lithia by 10 a.m. And I'm sorry, we left by 10 and we got home around noon, and got a whole bunch of new memories, pictures, and information, experiences, and then had to start onto that wonderful post-trip chore of doing laundry. So basically, Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival worth the trip. Well, in my book, heck yeah, we'll be doing it again. Mm-hmm. Awesome event. Did I get through in reasonable time, Scott?
You got through in reasonable time. And again, this is, like I said, this is a different departure from what we have been doing in the past, but it's kind of important to take those breaks.
Yeah, and we'll let you know, again, if you check out the Facebook page today and tomorrow, we're going to keep posting probably over the next week, because a bunch of them are from Susan. She has the photos, and once I start the actual entry, I'll give you the full 15-minute of the steep descent trails, and some of it, it's okay, dodging trees.
The video is really cool because, again, it reminds me a lot of the original Jeeptoberfest and Market and Marion. Those tight interweaving trails that were a lot of fun.
Yeah. And so we'll get all that up for you guys to look at. I look forward to your comments. So as always, if you have any questions or comments, email us at
onthetrailpodcast@gmail.com
or check us out on Facebook.
We have gotten a lot of Facebook messages, and we're going to get to them. I got a couple. One this morning about the PDF file for the Jeep manual or something like that. Yep. We'll get to that. We'll answer those as we get them. But we got a lot of really cool stuff coming up, so I can't wait.
We do. We've got some great guests coming on the show, as well as some more information. Overall, it's been a great trip, and we do wheel.
Exactly, yes. That is one of the questions. But again, like I said, you guys, enjoy. If you have any comments, questions, concerns for something coming up on the 15th, again, email us, message us, and we will get to this as fast as we can. And again, thank you as all for joining us on this adventure.
So, just like I got done doing, remember, take nothing but pictures, memories, and of course, your trash when you leave the trail. We want to leave them all open, whether they're up in Pennsylvania, North Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, Utah, something about 50 plus states, and territories, for our children, our children's children.
We got to keep these open. So
Thanks a lot.
With that, we'll bid you guys adieu.
Bye.
Bye.